Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Well, good to see you too. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this broadcast.
No problem. You know, there's not
Please
much
keep
else,
on every-
not much else
Sorry?
to do on a Sunday now. A little bit quiet, but business is, you know, running okay, I guess. So we're working hard.
Mhm.
What about Turkey?
Actually, it's not going good, but we'll manage that.
Yeah. I guess it's the same all over the world, but
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah.
We'll we seventh place about the coronavirus infection, and
Wow.
it's really bad. Actually, yeah. Sixth place has to be China.
Wow.
Yeah.
The best way is to, you know, follow the government's recommendations and, you know, stay home and healthy.
Yeah. Hello everyone. Today we continue to our broadcast with Tim Wendelboe. Of course, you already know him, but I would like to make introduce. He is the one of the pioneers of the specialty coffee industry. He is founder of Tim Wendelboe Espresso Coffee Shop and Roastery, co-founder of Nordic Approach. He had farm in Colombia where he developed biological coffee farming, and he has lots of awards including the World Barista Champion and World Cup Taster Champion title. Also, most of you know, Tim and his team have supported me and believed me for many years in Brewers Cup of Turkey, and thanks to them and behind their efforts, I won this year's Brewers Cup of Turkey. So Tim, we can go with the questions if it's alright.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So first question: when and which position did you start in the coffee industry?
Well, I actually started as a barista in a coffee shop called Stockflits. Stockflits is one of the oldest coffee store chains in Norway that is still around, but it had only opened like a modern coffee shop like in 97, 98, and then by accident I just you know, got a job there because I was done with school, and I needed to have a job, and then I just, you know, took a walk in the city center, and they had like a note in the window, and they needed 2 people, and they only had 2 applicants, so I got the job. So yeah, I had like 3-hour training, and then I was a barista from day 2, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry, which year did you start it?
This was in 1998, so 22 years ago. Yeah.
I started in
To the game, you know, I can honestly say that maybe the first 5-6 years, the industry didn't really know much about. Started to happen in many levels, not just barista knowledge, but also, you know, internet was being more and more available, so people were able to communicate. And also the green coffee and farmer side really started to change because of the cup of excellence competitions and so on. So, you know, the first years doesn't really count, I think.
second question: farmer, roaster, coffee shop and roastery owner, barista, or all of them? And which year do you more satisfied?
I really don't know how to title myself. I title myself formally as a director of my company, but like in my head, I still feel like I'm a barista. You know, nothing has really changed there, except, you know, I don't feel like I'm a roaster because I don't roast every day, but I'm also not a barista every day, for sure. Like, it's very rare that I stand behind the counter making coffee. I'm actually more on the farm than anything. But I guess, you know, if you want to describe my major role in my company is to run the company, and I'm also the green coffee buyer and head of the So you know, I have many hats, but I guess a coffee guy, that's probably the best title.
Yeah, definitely. Which
And a
field
coffee
do you
drinker.
most satisfied? Farming or quality control?
Well,
Traveling?
it's hard to kind of set one above the other. I think, you know, I love doing what I do, so the reason why I like to do a little bit of everything is because I feel like, you know, making a good cup of coffee really involves a lot of quality control in roasting and also the growing of the coffee. So under the baking sun, you know, watching snakes go by, and it sounds romantic. It's really hard work, but it's also very satisfying in terms of no stress. You know, sometimes you don't even see any progress, like the trees are even doing worse after you've kind of worked on them. So, but it's still something magic about working outside in nature.
I went at September, I guess.
Yeah, I think I was there in October. Yeah, I've been there a couple of times since then, but I was supposed to be there now.
Otis.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was end of October last year.
But when you came in Colombia, I'm leaving. I'm
Yeah.
leaving at the time. Unfortunately,
Typical.
I can't see you. Unfortunately, but farming is really different, actually.
Yeah, it is. I think, you know, it's hard for a barista or even a coffee roaster or green buyer to understand the work that is actually done on the farm, because a lot of times, like myself, when I travel and visit farmers, you're just visiting the farms maybe for a few hours, and then you have lunch with them. Work that's behind them. A lot of times they're just waiting, you know, because it's not necessarily hard work every day, but it's a lot of planning. There's a lot of risk involved. There's always something to organize, you know, something you have to fix or rebuild or, you know, fertilize or remove weeds or whatever. So I think, you know, it is a very tough job, but a lot of the farmers that I know actually don't workers who are doing the hard work for them.
Mm-hmm.
But they bear a lot of responsibility. You know, economically, not just for themselves, but also for their local communities. So I think even that makes them feel very stressed very often, I think.
Yeah. Most of the small farmers making small cooperatives.
Yeah.
But they don't get paid too much, actually.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
And profits are really cheap. But specialty coffee, they said specialty coffee is the key about making profits and making good salary and money, actually.
Yeah. Produce specialty coffee consistently, then it actually costs more to produce. Like, you have to invest in better picking, so you have to pay the pickers better. You have to invest in good equipment, you know, better storage conditions and so on. And it might not be that your farm has potential to produce fantastic. You've actually spent more money producing the coffee and you're not able to sell it for a higher price. So I don't think that specialty really is the solution. It's part of a solution, and I think, you know, if you have good coffee, it's always easier to sell good coffee than bad coffee.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of specialty buyers, including myself, we're just buying the good coffees. We're not buying the bad coffees, and that also needs to be sold. So you know, the farmer needs to diversify. I think that's probably the best advice that I would give a farmer, is to not only diversify in terms of qualities, but also how they produce coffees and so on.
Third question is, you have been working on this platform called The Pledge. Would you tell us the motivation behind the transparency and its benefits to the coffee industry?
Well, I think transparency is important because the most important part of our industry is actually the coffee producers. Without them, we don't have any coffee to sell. The ones who are not getting paid well, and apart from the commodity kind of price structure, even with specialty, I see a lot of times that farmers aren't getting paid a very decent pay for their coffee. And then you look at the other side of it, where you see a lot of people marketing, specialty is so great, we're paying more for coffee. Maybe you are paying more. Who gets the money? You can pay a lot of money to a company that use a lot of time marketing, but the farmer didn't get paid at all. So I think a transparency model, I think, is more important for our industry than it is for. It's not, the industry doesn't even understand it. So I think, I know for a fact that, I see it all the time, that there's a lot of kind of misuse of marketing when it comes to people saying they pay more, but they never show to it. They don't. Nobody's questioning them. So I think pressuring more and more roasters to be transparent, and if you don't have anything to hide, then there shouldn't be a problem being transparent.
We have another question from our audience. Do you think specialty coffee is luxury? Should it be treated like top shelf wine?
Still very affordable, the top quality wines are normally overpriced. So I think I can only speak for Norway because this is where I live, but most Norwegians could afford to drink high quality coffee every day. It doesn't have to be the most expensive high quality coffee, but at least good quality coffee they could drink every day, and by doing so and supporting a trade that is buying these generic instant coffees or supermarket coffees that are bought without even discussing the price with the farmer, and where we know that constantly the farmers are underpaid with the commodity price. So I don't believe it should be like an elitist thing at all.
You and 3 competitors started the first World Aeropress Championship at 2008. Whose idea was to organize a championship, and would you tell us that year's event as you remembered?
First of all, hello Isabella. The idea actually started in our office. We had a small office in our coffee shop, and I was working with a guy called Tim Barney, and we just started importing the Aeropress to Norway, and we didn't really know how to brew with it because it was quite new. I was working in the bar every day, so I didn't really have time to set aside to start geeking out with this thing, and we thought, why don't we just have a competition? And it was supposed to be with our staff, but we were only 4 of our best customers. He decided to compete, and one of our staff members, and then it was actually 2 of our staff members who competed. And then I thought, it's a competition. It's the first in the world, as I know, it's in the format, and why can't we just call it to call their baseball league the World Series without even having Japanese teams on it? So I thought, let's do the same.
Good idea, actually.
So it was fun. It was over in 5 minutes. I think they had like 5 minutes competition time. And then I was judging, and then we selected the winner, and that was our guest and friend who won. And then the next year we stepped it up a little bit, and we invited, I think we had like 20 something competitors. But then we had like a little different format. So the guy who actually made the best tasting coffee didn't win. We had like a presentation and points for presentation, and we felt that was just wrong. So on the third year, we decided to only go with the, make the coffee and do blind cupping and select the best one. And the best tasting coffee should be the one that wins. So it was fun, but it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to be a world competition going on every year. It was just a fun thing that we thought might create a little buzz so we could sell the Aeropress a little bit more.
Yeah, but that competition changed the world, actually. If you that competition, maybe it not will be World Aeropress Championship, I don't know. But it changed the world.
I think, at least it showed the coffee world that all these competitions don't all have to be dead serious. You can also have a lot of fun. And also we discovered after a while that a lot of people didn't want to compete in other competitions because they were very intimidating. But when they saw, Aeropress competitions being held on the beach while we had a beer, I think it had a good run, and it was a good timing when we started it, because the coffee community really started to grow, and we needed something that kind of put us together without being too serious,
Yeah. Last year's Aeropress Championship of Turkey arranged in the ship, actually.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. It's really fun.
I hope the sea wasn't too heavy on you.
Yeah. Actually, sea is very unstable.
Oh really?
Yeah, but it's very fun.
I guess you don't have to stir the coffee then.
Yeah, some guys jump at the sea and get swimming, and yeah, it's very fun competition actually.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to have some fun together and not be too serious.
Also, because of the shaking, scales are very unstable. Our friend William says that he's Aeropress champion of Turkey last year. Scales show 100 grams, sometimes 95 grams, or sometimes 150 grams. It's very shaky and it's very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess brewing by experience is a good thing then.
Also, we have lots of questions right now at the bottom of the broadcast.
Yeah, and I have to say hello to my nephew Lucas. He was watching. Hi, Lucas.
Yeah. How come you don't brew the Aeropress upside down to prevent from the leaking while brewing?
Well, it's mainly because when I developed the recipe that we are using, I developed it for the bar, for our espresso bar, and turning a brewing vessel upside down and turning it back the right way with full of boiling water is not a good thing in a high speed environment. I don't want accidents to happen, and also every movement you do in a coffee shop means you're wasting time on something. And so we kind of want to eliminate unnecessary movement, and you can brew equally good coffee on both ways. It's just a matter of figuring out how. So I don't really care whether you brew it upside down or not, as long as it works for you. And my problem is a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes that the rubber gasket is not cleaned properly, so you get kind of dirty flavors from that. So, but you can do whatever you like.
Another question is, what do you think about the home roasting?
Well, I don't know what to think about it. I think it's, if you can't access good roasted coffee, it might be a fun thing to do. It's a lot of work, and if you have a good roasting machine, of course, you can make very good results, but you can also make terrible results. But if you really want to learn about roasting and really enjoy that process, why not? But I think for most people, it's a little overkill.
Yeah. Are the trends in coffee whiplashing the growers and not letting them the invest of one thing long enough?
Well, I'm not sure what he means by the trends, but I do see, especially these days during the Corona, COVID times, we do see that the word commitment didn't mean so much after all. I see a lot of, well, not a lot, but I've seen buyers, canceling containers of coffee from farmers that they say they have good relationship with and so on. And I've spoken to some of the farmers that I buy from, and Gilberto Barahona in Los Pirineos in El Salvador, he says it very well, like, we're all in this together. So, instead of just canceling containers, maybe just give me a call and then we can, work something out. Maybe you buy less, maybe you buy for a lower price. We're all in this together somehow. So, I think the ability to think long term is very rare in our industry, and also like in general. I think most people aren't able to think very long ahead. I'm not saying that I am very good at it either, but I started a business knowing that that's what I want to do for the rest of my life, and then you have to kind of put your head into making long-term plans and kind of follow those plans and stick to those plans. And of course you need to change routes sometimes, but at least I know where my goals are, and I think unfortunately a lot of people are maybe not in this for the long run, and then you can just do whatever you want, I guess, and don't really think about the consequences.
Does a coffee grinder has placed on a leveler surface? Our audience asked that.
On a level surface?
Yeah.
I don't think that really matters that much, actually, because the beans are normally forced through some kind of grinding device, and that are quite firmly aligned somehow. So I think more importantly, are your grinding discs or grinding burrs aligned properly? That's probably a more important question. So like if you had an espresso grinder on a ship, it will never be aligned. It will go like this, but you will still be able to grind evenly because if the discs were aligned well. So I think good grind quality is always important to have a tasty brew, for sure.
What about freezing cold beans? What do you think about that? It's very popular these days, actually.
Yeah, which if you but it's a lot of plastic if you want to do that all the time. So I would rather just recommend buy a little bit less coffee more often, and for instance, in my kitchen, I bring coffee home every now and then, and we just leave it on the kitchen counter until we've drank it all, and it's normally not a problem. And I don't really bring the freshest coffee home either, because I prefer to drink coffee that has been resting for at least a week or maybe 2 weeks. So at least in my experience, once the bag is open, you should try to drink it as fast as you can within a week or two. But if you can't do that, then portioning it out in smaller bags and freezing it, and you can reuse the bags, of course, but make sure you squeeze out all the air. But I have 2 samples of coffee in my freezer, and that's just because I'm saving it for an experiment. But other than that, I don't really freeze coffee myself. I don't have to.
Me neither, actually. I don't get why is the really almost freshest coffee is very important, because at the 2017 I serve your geisha at the Brewers Cup at the 17th day, actually.
Yeah.
The thing is really important, actually.
Yeah, I think letting the coffee rest for a while, but it should be resting in in the sealed bag. You know, don't open the bag and then rest it, because oxidation will happen. So you know, opening a bag doesn't speed up degassing at all, unless the coffee was packed in a pressurized container. So if the coffee is just in a normal bag, you don't speed up the degassing by opening the bag, because the pressure inside the bag and outside the bag is the same. So, but you will speed up oxidation, which sometimes can have an interesting effect on the flavor. But I would advise against it if you don't have to. And having said that, a lot of roasters don't flush the bags with nitrogen or CO2 or argon or any inert gas. So then it doesn't really matter whether the coffee is sealed or not, because there's still going to be oxygen inside and the coffee will oxidize. So in that case, you need to use the coffee, you know, within maybe 3-4 weeks after it's roasted, I think.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, then it would probably be better to keep it in the freezer if you don't want to spoil it.
Okay. Next question is, you and your team and your coffee shop and roastery have got lots of awards from the different competition and different organizations, especially your success at Aeropress Championship and World Cup Tasters Championship. Also, you and your team's success at the Nordic Roaster competition 8 times. It's really amazing. What is the source of you and your team's motivation in those competitions?
I think, you know, one of the kind of principles in our business is we always try to be better every day. And not only do we want to serve better coffee every day, we want to have better service every day. We want to buy better green coffee every year. So that's why we work closely with farmers to improve the quality, you know, long term. So, you know, that for us is a good motivation to go to work and what makes it fun, you know. And also, I think, you know, especially in the later years, we've been focusing more on the roasting, because that's probably more part of our DNA, or it reflects more how we actually work today, to focus on the roasting, because it is actually a team effort. I don't really roast coffee myself. Like, I can do it, but I have people doing it. We have 3 different people roasting for us, and I'm doing the quality control together with them. And, you know, when we compete in a format like Nordic Roaster, it's really no difference from what we do every day till the competition. We do exactly the same routines, but it makes we focus a little bit more on it. You know, it's a fun project that we can focus on together, and it's really nerve-wracking every year to see how we do. And I think it's a good way to kind of measure if you're on the right path or not. You know, for me, it's not so important to win that competition when we enter, but for me, it's important that I liked my own coffee when I tasted it, and we taste the coffees blind. So if I didn't like my coffee, that's even more of a motivation to go back and, you know, work harder to make sure that your coffee is where it should be. And where it should be is, you know, who is to say where it should be? Well, we are the ones who decide what we like and what we strive for.
Also, I compete this year at Roasting Championship of Turkey. It's my first time. Unfortunately, I got the 6th place.
Yeah, that's a good start.
But actually, I make an accident. My single origin coffee is not roast because I'm not calibrated with that machine. I'm using Loring in our roastery, but SCA competition roasters, it's classic drum roaster, and I don't get to use it actually.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's very different, and I messed up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But maybe next time. Also, I admire to Nordic Roaster Forum. It's very efficient than SCA Roasting Championship, actually. It's very, very useful and very practical.
Yeah, I think, you know, at least for us, it reflects more the way we work in a roastery. Whereas I think, I honestly have to say that I don't really know the rules of the World Roasting Championship. I think it's a little boring to watch, so I've never really managed to watch it. But as far as I understand, it's more of a combination of Q grading, green buying, roasting, which not every roastery works that way.
Yeah. Next question. It will never become the best coffee in the world, but that isn't the goal with the project either. You say about the coffees you get the finca El Suelo in your statement in either magazine. What is the vision behind your desire to biological coffee farming?
Well, the whole project started with I had a desire to experiment, with coffee. Not really knowing exactly what to do, but I knew that I wasn't willing to risk farmers' income by doing silly experiments. So I thought, we would just plant coffee and do lots of different experiments. And one example could be like removing some flowers from the tree so that the tree produces less but higher quality, for instance. But as soon as I bought the farm, I started questioning whether or not to do organic farming, and then I was guided by a guy that I met in a coffee conference in Maine towards biological farming. And then once I kind of started taking classes in soil biology and understanding how that works, for me the importance of experimenting was not there anymore. Like, I really wanted to try to grow coffee with biological methods and prove that you could do that, and produce higher quality and more coffee per hectare by not having to buy any pesticides or fertilizer or fungicides or anything. So far, it's been 5 years now since I started, and I've produced less than 100 grams of coffee. So you can say that the project has failed so far, but I never even grew a tomato before I started this. So first I have to learn, and then we're developing methods that are working better now. So now the goal is actually to do what I say is to try to prove that we can grow coffee in the real sustainable way. We talk about sustainability all the time in our industry, yet no one addresses the fertilizer use, the pesticide use, all of these things. So, which is not sustainable at all. So if you really want to talk about sustainability, you really have to start taking care of the soil, because that's what feeds us and what produces coffee in the first place. So now the goal is to try to prove that it can be done, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how it can be done, at least in my local environment. So hopefully it will succeed someday, and then my dream is that we could invite farmers to come and learn our techniques, and they could implement them. And it actually works really much better for smallholder farms than it does for bigger farms, because a lot of the things you can do, manually yourself without any machines or anything. So, and most of the coffee farmers in the world are actually smallholder farmers. So I really think it can change something.
Yeah. Actually, this is a gift for the coffee farming. And,
I hope so.
I watched your presentation at the Barista Guild at the YouTube. You show a forest picture, and you said it's grow by self. That's the nature. This is a really good vision. Actually, I really impressed that.
Yeah, and I think nature is brutal. So if your trees are not healthy, they're gonna die. Most of the times, if they're growing in healthy soils that are suited for growing the trees or the whatever you want to grow, then you will have very healthy crops. But as soon as there is an imbalance in your soil that's not suited for your trees, nature is brutal. It'll take out your trees and grow something else. So you kind of have to be a steward and make sure that the conditions are right for that to happen, which is the difficult part, especially because I live in Norway and my farm is in Colombia.
We have a question from my friend. What do you think about the plastic bottled coffee? Some companies sell beans in fancy plastic box. Good looking, but what about the freshness and tastes?
Well, plastic bottles or glass bottles or tin cans can be a really good way of preserving coffee, because especially if you flush or have a little bit of nitrogen or CO2 gas in the bottle first, so that there's no oxygen. And the reason is because it's a more solid construction, and the coffee will degas CO2. Soon after packaging, there will be a pressure inside that container, and the pressure actually prevents the coffee from degassing, which will keep the oils more intact in the cell structure. So there's a reason why Illy packs in pressurized cans. It really helps preserve the freshness of the coffee. One thing you have to be aware of is that when you open that bottle, you have to kind of help the coffee degas again, and because the inside is pressurized, when you release that pressure, of course the coffee is going to start degassing. So you have to wait a little bit before you actually start using that coffee. Otherwise, you're going to get, especially when you do espresso, you're going to get a lot of crema, and it's not going to taste very good, and it's probably going to taste a little sour, because when you brew espresso like that, during the brewing, the CO2 gas will come out of the coffee and prevent the water from going into the coffee, which means you will under extract and get sour coffees.
Yeah. I'm going to next question.
Yeah.
Question like this: I was more than excited when I first heard of Finca El Suelo project of yours, and delighted to experience this coffee. What was your projection as you make the harvest coffee from the different soil types? What did you expect us to understand?
I don't expect you to understand anything, but I think explaining the difference between like biodynamic, organic, biological, conventional farming. Not everyone is interested in those aspects, so I'm still kind of trying to figure out simple ways to teach those methods. But I'm hoping that the quality will speak for itself. And in fact, we had a cupping of our kind of first, not the first harvest, because I drank that myself. It was like a couple of beans, but it was in. I was there in October, November, and I harvested around 50 grams of green coffee from one geisha tree that I have. And we cupped that with a group of people in Norway. I had a little talk about soil biology, and we cupped the coffee afterwards. And then next to that cup, we had a geisha coffee from Elias, which is my neighbor. So that coffee was grown just a couple of 100 meters away from me. And there was a huge difference in quality, even though I didn't have a lot of coffee from my tree, and it's a young tree. My coffee tasted better. So I'm hoping, that by being able to grow higher quality, which I hope I'm able to do, the consumer and coffee professionals will start to get interested in why is your coffee tasting better than this one when it's just grown right next to you. So that's my hope for the project, but we'll see if it happens or not. I don't have any guarantees that it's going to work. So
I'm going to next question. Years ago, on consumer side, one of the most important parameters to value coffee was its growing altitude. But now, it doesn't account of such importance compared to fermentation, variety, etc. What do you expect to be important in 5 to 10 years in advance from today?
Well, I think we will see a lot of those old rules, even with processing, not being so definable. Altitude is still very important, and I know for a fact that it has an impact, basically because the temperatures and normally the sunlight conditions are different higher up than lower down. So it will affect the quality. The thing is that you can kind of imitate a high-grown coffee by processing the coffee different. And what I mean with that is, like, for instance, with a Bourbon variety, that I buy from Honduras, it's extremely fruity from the higher altitude farms. But from the lower altitude farms, it doesn't taste fruity, but you can then compensate by doing prolonged fermentation, honey process, and then you will add some fruitiness that might be similar in flavor, but not the same. So, and I also think, you know, the coffee world will discover varieties that will taste great at lower altitudes. So, you know, I think it will be probably more specialized in a way, like you see in wine, that some types of grapes do better in certain areas than others. You know, you have hot climate grapes, cold climate grapes, and so on. I think you will see the same with coffee. It's just, for now, we don't really have access to that genetic material. And I think a lot of the selections made is done based on coffee research centers being, you know, situated at a certain altitude. And they would select for coffees that taste good at that altitude, but not necessarily higher or lower altitude. So, well, and I think, you know, because farmers now exchange seeds a lot and are looking for strange, rare varieties, there's a lot of development being done by like World Coffee Research in variety development. I think we will see better tasting coffee in the future that don't necessarily need the processes to make them special.
Yeah. Well, also, Elias growing SL28 in their farm.
Yes.
It's very fruity. It's very tastes like Kenyan coffee. It's very complex.
But still, you know, it tastes much better in Kenya. I have to say, like there is a huge difference in quality between the SL grown in Colombia and SL grown in Kenya. So, yeah, and on Elias's farm in Colombia, I think the Bourbon so far has been the best variety. But we have discovered another one that we think is Maragojip or Maragojipe, and it tastes absolutely amazing. But it only has like 20 trees, so now we're planting that like crazy. Because it's a unique flavor that I haven't tasted in coffee before, and it's really intense. So, you know, hopefully in 3-4 years we can at least sell a little bit of that type of coffee.
I tasted before Maragogipe at the Colombia from the different farms. Very complex, actually.
Yeah, it can be
also,
fantastic.
I tasted the first time at Colombia pink bourbon. Do you taste it before?
Yeah, and Elias has both pink, red, and yellow bourbon. So we've been separating it, and the pink and red taste quite similar actually on his farm, but they're both really delicious.
Yeah. We have a question from our followers. Would like to know if you have been using aerated compost tea in your farm, and how have the plants reacted of the tea?
Yes, I'm using all the time when I'm there. I'm spraying with aerated compost tea foliar on the leaves. I've also been injecting it into the soil, but I'm also spraying compost extract, which is not as active. You know, we're not seeing like huge results, and part of the reason for that is because maybe I'm not making the best compost available, so I don't have enough of the organisms that I need. Also, the soil is quite bare. I mean, there's still weeds growing there, but it's hard to find enough material to cover the ground. So when you have like really strong tropical sun, the top layer just dries out very, very fast, and we've had a lot of drought during the years that I've been farming. So, but we are seeing a shift gradually, and you can see it on photos. Like if you look at a photo from 4 years ago and a photo today, the farm now, you'll find that around the coffee trees it's much softer. It's not as hard as it used to be. And I have this device, it's called a penetrometer. It's kind of like a metal rod you can stick into the soil. And now I can get much deeper with that without having any resistance than I used to. And if you use that on Elias's farm next to me, it'll stop, you know, just a couple of centimeters down. So we are seeing some effect, but it's not I think you would see a bigger effect if you try to grow like garden vegetables or something. That's just because a coffee tree really is a forest plant, and that really needs a lot of fungus in the soil in order to be healthy. And to get fungus back really takes time, moisture. You know, the ground needs to be covered, so it's difficult to make that shift very fast.
Mm-hmm. We have three questions.
Yes.
One of is from Brazil. Why we are living a fermented coffee way? What is your opinion about these topics? Everyone asking about the fermentation.
I think fermentation has become popular because it is actually quite difficult to find very high quality coffee. Mm-hmm. And a good example is I was helping Diego Campos, the Colombian barista champion, with his preparations for the World Championship some years ago. And the year before I helped him, he was actually spending a whole year in Colombia, traveling around, visiting farmers, tasting coffee almost every day, trying to find coffee that scored above 90 points. And so he wasted all his time trying to find something that is basically not there, and he forgot to practice his routine, you know. So that just tells me, you know, if the second or third largest coffee producing country in the world can't produce a 90-point coffee, then we're looking for something that maybe not be there. And to be honest, when as a green buyer, during a year, maybe I will taste a 90-point coffee maybe 2, 3, 4 times. It really depends, but those coffees are really difficult to come by. And then if you want to compete with a very distinct coffee and you cannot find it, well, a way to make the coffee taste very distinct is to, you know, over-ferment it. Not over-ferment, but ferment it so long that it really takes on the flavor of fermentation. Now, there's nothing really wrong about it, but for me it's not a very interesting flavor. I've tasted the ferment flavor so many times, and it's quite similar, independent on where the coffee was grown. So you're kind of covering up the coffee's quality a little bit. But having said that, it's also a great way for a farmer to make the value of his coffee higher. So, for instance, Gilberto in El Salvador, that I buy coffee from, are not grown at very high altitudes. So, you know, his farm is on a volcano, so obviously there's a smaller area on top than on the bottom. So, but his top coffees, he still washes, and they taste fantastic. But you know, the bottom coffees he used to sell for market price, which was, you know, $1 per pound, and now we can get $3, $4, $5 per pound because it has a little bit more fruit flavor, and the buyers really love to buy those coffees. So there's nothing wrong in it. It's just, for me, it's not an interesting flavor overall. Like, it can be nice, and I do buy a little bit of naturals now from Ethiopia, but yeah, it's. If I could choose, I would prefer to have a very high quality washed coffee. Yeah, that's just my preference.
Okay, I'm checking the questions. Our head roaster asking this: where that bell-like sound comes from? Is that a cat? He asked.
Where what?
Bell ringing.
This one here?
I think that.
I'm pouring kombucha into my glass. No, I don't have a cat. My wife is allergic, so no pets in this house.
Yeah. I'm checking the other questions. Do you have heard about the sprouting process coffees?
Yes.
What is that? I don't know that.
Well, it's leaving the like after washing or depulping, you can leave the parchment coffee in humid conditions, like in water, for instance, or in a barrel, closed barrel, or whatever, until the seeds actually sprout. So, you know, there's an embryo in each coffee bean because it's a seed. So when they start to sprout, a little kind of green thing comes out. Then you can stop the process by drying it, and then roast and drink the coffee. I think it's probably not the best way if you want to preserve coffee for a long time, because the actual sprouting process itself the embryo will start to consume a lot of the sugars, I think, or the nutrients inside the bean. So, and I have tasted it in Brazil, and I would just say that maybe it's not my preference. That's a polite way to say it.
Other question is, what the precautions are you planning to take or taking at your farms about the climate change?
Planting shade, that's the best thing you can do. Making sure that the ground is covered, your coffee trees have sufficient shade will greatly reduce the top temperatures, and also if you have problems with frost, it will also prevent from freezing. But also making sure that the soil is as healthy as it can be by having a lot of organisms. That means you can hold water better. The roots can grow deeper and access the water. So, working holistically with soil quality, and then I really mean biological life in the soil and shade and covering the ground and so on. I think that's the best way to do it.
Did you see the bricks and juiciness of the cherries getting better year per year if there is a harvest?
I don't measure for the last 2 years, but I don't measure bricks at all, actually, because first of all, we don't consume the cherry. I make kombucha out of the cascara, but and also, like, to make a cup of coffee, you need so many cherries and beans. And when do you measure? Like, do you measure at the time when you pick? How many cherries should you measure to get an average, and so on? I don't think it's a very good science to use in terms of determining when the coffee is ripe or not, to be honest. I think, farmers' experience and by doing experimentation on actually tasting the coffee after it's harvested is probably a better way to determine when to harvest. That's just my opinion. And I might be proven wrong, like it's not a law that I'm saying, but I just don't find it to be a very accurate measuring device for deciding when to harvest coffee.
I'm going to next question. Again, you really care about the importance of transparency, also the knowledge, how to produce more qualified coffee. You don't hesitate to share your answer of that question with the people from the community. How can we understand with being so open and sharing in a time when everyone is hiding a secret recipe?
I really don't believe in secret recipes.
Yeah.
The thing is, coffee is so diverse, and every farm is different, every coffee bean that you buy is different, every water is different. So, I think, sharing knowledge and helping other people become better will only increase the interest in our industry and help us all sell more coffee. Like, it wouldn't help if I was the only one in the world who knew how to make good coffee. Maybe I would have a line out the door, but it wouldn't make a difference. So, I believe sharing knowledge is the best way to learn, because when I share knowledge, people ask interesting questions that I have to think about and research. People also share their knowledge, and I don't really have any secrets. It's making good coffee is kind of a recipe. You have to start with good quality ingredients, roast it well, brew it well, and that's it.
We have another question from Brazil. You visit Brazil for a long time ago. Do you see any evolution of Brazilian coffees in terms of flavor process? We are doing a good job.
I think there has been, and there still is, a lot of good coffees in Brazil. Most of the ones that I've tasted come from smaller farms on the East Coast, so in Espírito Santo, in that kind of area. But it doesn't mean that there aren't great coffees elsewhere. I was just visiting Da Terra, was it last year? I think so.
Yeah.
Had some really nice coffees there. So there's good coffee everywhere, and I think, you know, as soon as people start taking care of it, farm is just not situated in a very good altitude. They might not grow the right varieties for that altitude to produce good quality. Yeah, so it really depends, you know. It's again, there's no real secret to it. If you do good work and have good varieties and good soils and everything, then the potential is definitely there. And I do like Brazilian coffees myself, so I think that, you know, I've tasted some spectacular coffees there. And if you're ever in Brazil, you need to visit Isabella Raposeiras in Sao Paulo. Her shop is just amazing, and she buys some spectacular coffees. Also, the guys at Fazenda Ambiental Fortaleza are doing a great job with small producers. And there's plenty of people in Brazil doing great work, I think. So
yeah, I tasted before Datara Masterpiece series one coffee. I don't remember the variety, but I think maybe Wush Wush. It's very complex and very different variety. I don't ever taste before in that time. Wush Wush.
Exactly.
Good. Yeah. We have two different questions too from two followers. If wash coffees interest you more, how do you increase the nutrients of every seed's biological? So far, what region or where in the world do you see the best washed coffee nowadays?
Oh, wow. Well, the first question, how to increase nutrients in seed? Well, you make the soil more healthy. So the more microorganisms you have in the soil, they will actually feed the plant, and the plant will feed the microorganisms. So the more life you have in the soil, the more nutrients will be available to the tree, and it will absorb more nutrients into the seeds as well. So that's the kind of theory behind soil biology. The best washed coffees in the world? I mean, you can find it almost anywhere. I think, you know, it's more down to farmers. But I will say, like, if I have to pick like a country or a region, I think East Africa still, you know, have fantastic coffees, like Kenya and Ethiopia. The washed coffees there are spectacular. Not just because they have great varieties, but because a lot of the coffees are produced in huge quantities at cooperatives. So that makes it possible to do a lot of sorting and selection of just the best top quality coffee all the time. So, you know, the processes that they use in Kenya is really all about sorting and separating. And so that's probably the best kind of system for producing highest quality washed coffees.
A dear follower's question is like that. Tim, what do you think about the carbon to nitrogen ratio should be in organic biological coffee farming, and do you think the coffee plants more fungal dominate soils?
Yes. Coffee plants is a plant that grows wild in the forest. It doesn't grow in a prairie. Forest soils are always fungal dominated. So, like really fungal dominated. So that tells me that, you know, the soil in a healthy coffee farm should be fungal dominated, which I have never seen, you know, happen. Maybe only in Ethiopia, where they actually grow coffee in wild forests. Then, you know, normally the first thing a coffee farmer will do is to cut down all the shade trees, then plant the coffee and plant new shade trees if they plant shade at all, so that can kind of grow together with the coffee. And by doing so, you basically kill the life or the environment for the fungus to live, because fungus doesn't really love a lot of sun. It needs dark, moist places like forests. So yeah, that means you know, the fungal hyphae, which is like small tubes growing in the soil, is mainly made of carbon. So that means you need a lot of carbon in the soil.
I'm going to next question I have. We know that you prefer to make close relationships with the coffee producers. What is the importance and to be acquainted with the farmer, talking face to face for you and them?
Yeah, and adding to that, I saw a question that it says, you usually have the same coffees from Honduras. Do you look for new farmers, or do you decide only have the ones you already have? That's kind of related, I think. And I prefer to buy from the same farms every year. And the reason is because we actually do a lot of hands-on work together with them, and we develop ideas and protocols that they follow. So, for instance, with the Marisabel and Moises that you competed with their coffees, they produce a lot of coffee, but they don't produce all their coffee the same way. So, when they produce coffee that they want to offer to me, they make sure they only pick the ripest coffee. They dry them on raised beds near their house, under shades. They select different varieties for me. Whereas for a bigger customer, they will not do that because they don't have the capacity. So they will do mechanical drying or patio drying or something like that. So, and also we do plant varieties together. That takes, 5, 6, 7, 8 years before it actually produces in a good amount. Sometimes even up to 10 years. Not saying that it takes 10 years for the tree to produce, but first you have to plant a few of them and then taste if it's good or not after 3-4 years, and then you plant more and then you wait another 3-4 years, maybe even more, to get a production. So that work takes time, and that's the kind of quality I'm looking for. And instead of trying to just travel randomly around buying the best coffee year after year, I'm pretty sure you will end up buying different coffees every year. Because, randomly coffee can taste delicious. Like, without the farmer even doing an effort or even knowing what he's doing, his coffee can taste really good sometimes. And we do see that. But very good producers can consistently produce high quality if they know what they're doing and they work systematical. And that's kind of why we are working with the same farmers every year, because we have developed systems together with them so that we know that their coffee will always taste good. Even if they have a bad year, they will still have consistent, clean, sweet coffees, So that's kind of, it costs a lot of money and it's a long-term investment. So we kind of are working together with the long-term, and I do see them as part of my whole team in my business. Not that I own the farmers or anything, but they're a huge part of why our team is successful. And that's why you have to work together with them and not just, shop around and meet a new person every year.
Definitely. I'm going to next question. It's about the direct trade, not just only meeting to face-to-face. What are the benefits of direct trade for farmers and roasting companies?
Well, I think the ability to first of all demand a higher price for the farmers, also discussing qualities and how to produce the qualities that the buyer is looking for, so that the farmer's coffee is more attractive. There's many different benefits, I think, but I think direct trade is not so effective if there's no commitment. And we talked about this earlier. Like, I think commitment is more important than actually doing the transaction directly, because you always need an exporter in between to help mill the coffee if the farmer doesn't have their own mill or have an export license. So it's difficult to define direct trade, but I think commitment and transparency is probably, for me at least, the most important parts of when I trade coffee. Like that everyone in the trade knows where the money goes, and that the buyer is willing to commit to either vocal contracts or written contracts, and also come back year after year and buy more coffee. I think that's probably the most important aspects. They tell me that knowing that the buyer will come back every year really gives them security and willingness to invest in their farms.
Actually, it's the last question. If we have not question from the followers, also this is the really tough one about today. Do you think how the coffee industry is going to be affected from the coronavirus pandemic, and how to overcome the effects of this outbreak as a business?
I mean, everyone will be affected. not just coffee industry. So I really don't know how. I know one thing though, is that people still drink coffee, and they drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Especially here in Norway, a lot of people drink coffee at home. They always have, and so our sales is down because all the restaurants are closed, and we do sell to a lot of restaurants, but we see that we do sell a lot more online and in our coffee shop. So, but yeah, for sure it will affect everyone, and I think trying to be a little creative, not being afraid of looking how you can develop your business in a better way and adapting to the new situation is probably the best way forward for everyone. For instance, if you have a coffee shop and you're not allowed to have guests inside, maybe you should open a hole in the wall and sell takeaway through that hole. Delivery, home delivery, opening online stores, all these kind of things. So yeah, I still think the coffee will be sold that's produced this year, but I do see, like I was just speaking with Elias in Colombia, and he's not able to get workers because normally he uses seasonal workers from other towns. So he only has the work group that he lives next to the farm now, which is not enough. So he might not be able to harvest all his coffee and produce it in a good way. So it will affect everyone for sure. So
yeah.
It's only a matter of trying to help each other survive and supporting your favorite coffee shops and roasters and so on. I think that's the best way forward.
Yeah. Also, I heard this before about not get the pickers from the other cities to coffee farm. Try to make a solution about this.
Yeah.
But I don't know actually.
No, the coffee needs to be harvested soon. Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think one way is to just pick as much as you can and just sell it in the commodity market. And whether the price is going up or down, I'm not smart enough to understand that. So I don't really know.
That's it.
Perfect. My battery is dying, so that's perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for the podcast.
Thanks everyone for asking questions and everything. It was great.
I will come to Norway before World Brewers Cup.
Yes.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Because we actually not really meet face to face.
Yeah, never. I guess this is the first time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure to having you.